In the past, I used to like films just as much as the next guy. No more and no less. But a couple of years ago, I discovered just how great and how powerful films could be. And ever since then, it's been a hobby of mine to watch many great films. And I've seen a lot. In fact, if I were to list 15 of my favorite movies, I'm willing to bet that I saw 10 of them for the first time in the past 2 years. But many films have stuck with me throughout the years, including the films made by Disney. I never mentioned this before, but I am a pretty big fan of animated movies. I think I love them so much because of how they completely take me somewhere that's entirely original, unlike live-action films that have to rely on actors and locations. And I think this makes animated movies special. Of course, I love live-action films, and they are special in their own ways, but animated movies seem to stick with me longer than live-action films. I may not even like the animated films more, but a good one catches my mind for about 90 minutes and has me thinking about them constantly. In a way, it's easier for me to love an animated movie than a regular movie. I guess you could say that I'm biased, but I'm not sure that terminology would be correct, since I don't necessarily love animated films more as a whole than live-action films. I sort of like to think that animated films are in a special place in my heart, while the live-action films are in another. So to me, the two different types of films sort of exist in their own worlds, and I don't try to compare animated films with live-action ones. And because of this, I wasn't sure how to rate animated movies, which is why I didn't give My Neighbor Totoro a numerical rating, and it's a perfect score, by the way. I know it may sound like I'm just sort of talking randomly right now, but there is a purpose behind my explaining all of this to you. While I hope that you'll be able to listen to my reviews and clearly understand my thoughts, I think you'll have a much easier time if I explain exactly how I tick to you. So what I explain to you now may be beneficial to you in the future, and will help you to better understand my mental state when I review animated movies. And now I reach the main reason why I'm making this video. I said that many of my favorite films from long ago stuck with me, and I said that animated films stick with me easier than live-action films. This is true, and yet I was thinking about the Disney films and reached a startling realization. Many of them hadn't stuck. Some did, like The Lion King, Aladdin, and Peter Pan, but many, including several that I loved as a kid, didn't. And honestly, I haven't seen a Disney film in a long time, at least not one of the older ones. And I remember films like Pinocchio and The Fox and the Hound being two of my favorite films when I was younger, but for some reason I haven't seen them in a really long time. And that's no reflection on the quality of those films either. It's just that, well, I haven't seen them in probably a decade. And I guess it's just circumstances that have prevented me from it. I don't remember plot details and characters, but it's been a long enough time where, seeing them now would make them feel fresh to me. And it would also allow for the emotions of the film to reach me more easily than if I had seen them a lot more recently. And so I decided to watch these two films, The Fox and the Hound and Pinocchio. But then I got to thinking about it, and I realized that there were quite a few mainstream Disney films that I hadn't seen in a long time or hadn't seen at all. So I decided that while I was on break from college, I'd watch as many Disney films as I could, and I'd continue to do so until I've watched them all. And I have decided to review each and every one. Now, I'm not going to rush this. I won't keep a schedule. I want to enjoy watching these, so I won't force myself to in order to get a review out in time. But I am for sure going to watch them all, and my viewing of them will be in order of release, and I'll review them right after I've watched them. So expect an average of maybe one a week, so this process will last about a year. In my reviews, however, I won't go into as much detail in regards to character development and plot unless it's necessary, but they will be about 10 minutes long apiece. I'm an admirer of Walt Disney and his professional life, and have learned a lot about him over the years, so I may throw in some trivia or tell you what my favorite scene or character is. I'm not sure right now how I'm going to do it, but I will establish a system over my first few reviews and stick to it throughout. And I'm also going to give the Disney films ratings like I should have done with My Neighbor Totoro, which I'll probably come back to and review later with adding a bit more and add a new rating to it. I also want to make clear that I do not want this channel to become a Disney review channel or even an animation movie channel. I love animated films, but I want to include just as much, if not more, live-action film reviews. So I will not completely dedicate myself to doing the Disney movies. Instead, I'll review them along with other various live-action films. And now it's time for some ground rules. First off, for this series of reviews, I'm only reviewing the traditional Disney animated films. That means no Pixar or hybrid films like Mary Poppins or The Three Caballeros. I will get to those films later. I have not looked into these specific films, and although I plan to review them all, I may skip over one or two. If I do, it is intentional, and I will explain why I skip over it in my review for the film right after it. Now, I plan to review every one of these films, but I can't tell you for sure that I'll have no problems being able to view every one. I want to, but I honestly don't know how easy it will be to find some of Disney's lesser-known films online. Hopefully I'll have no trouble, but I may. I'm also not going to be reviewing Disney's films that are set to music, including Fantasia. For this series of reviews, I want to just stick to the traditional films. However, I will make a series of reviews for Fantasia and the other Disney films like it later on. The next rule I have is probably the one that will lead to the most controversy. When I review these films, I'm not going to take their release date into account when it concerns the characters or the plot. I'm going to be looking at these films from today's perspective, and not from the perspective of the time they were released. If a film feels like the product of the time it was released, or feels dated, that will hurt its rating. However, I will take the release date into account when it comes to the quality of the animation. Unlike a good story, animation isn't timeless, and does improve over the years. However, the animation has to be good for the time period it was released in. If it isn't, then the animation quality will hurt the film's rating also. Lastly, I want everyone to know that Disney's computer animated films, like Tangled and Frozen, and Chicken Little, do count. I don't care about the animation type, only about the studio that actually made the films. And that's about all I have to say for now. However, sometime in the next year I plan to make a tribute video of some kind to Disney, especially the Disney from Walt's era. Walt Disney is one of my all-time favorite filmmakers, and I have a tremendous amount of respect for him. In fact, I started thinking about doing these reviews while reading information about Walt Disney. So, since I am a big fan of Walt's, expect some trivia in most of the older films' reviews. I'd like to provide interesting information about the production of these films as much as I want to talk about the film's quality. And there's one more thing. I decided to make these reviews a sort of contest. After I review them all, I'm going to make a final video ranking either the top 10 or top 20 greatest Disney films. And who knows, I might even rank the worst ones too. And that's all for now. Stay tuned for my review of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs.